guys, I feel like I'm back. I literally wasn't even gone. Like, I still had a YouTube video up last week, but in terms of creating new content, this is the first new thing I've filmed since my surgery, and I feel like I'm back. Like, honestly, I was just doing my makeup and I was like, I am so excited to film today. Like, normality is returning. This week's video is going to be covering my like social media story. Not only that, I am going to be taking you guys through like my biggest tips, pieces of advice if anybody does want to kind of get into influencing, content creating, want any help boosting their platform, because genuinely, and I'm not saying this to sound like big-headed, I do think that throughout my journey, I've picked up really, really good tips, and I've kind of learned a lot about Instagram and TikTok on ways to connect with brands, boost your platform, boost your engagement, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to go through my story and then head on to the kind of like tips and advice portion of the video at the end. I did also get questions from you guys on Instagram, so we're going to be going through those as well. I feel like I'm definitely talking at a million miles an hour, but like I said, just so excited to be filming again. Also, just a little FYI, if you guys do see any things kind of like poking out of my chest, no, that is not my new boobs. I actually have like my support bra, and then I have like a compression strap on at the moment, so that is what that is. So please don't think that I've just gone and botched myself completely, because they're looking great. Let me tell you that, they're looking great. But yeah, we just have to have like the safety harnesses on for the next 2 weeks. So without further ado, I think we should just jump straight into the video.
I am, of course, back to JD today. Oh, I can see loads of you saying hi. Hi, girls.
So this is going to be my Instagram story, basically telling you guys how I literally went from 0 to 100k on Instagram in a year, and 0 to 300k plus on TikTok in just over a year, which is mental when you think of those figures, but it's completely possible, and I'm going to tell you guys exactly how I did it. So I started my fitness Instagram about 5 or 6 years ago. People are probably gonna be like, what? But I literally used it for about a month. I blocked all of my friends off it. I was so embarrassed about it. It was in the first year of university. Didn't really know what I was doing with fitness, but I wanted some level of like accountability, and I just always felt like putting things out there in the world in terms of like putting up a story really keeps me accountable. So I did that for about a month, and then I was like, not really feeling it, like kind of fell off the fitness bandwagon. Didn't come back to it until 2020 in December. So December 2020, I basically kickstarted it again. I told all my friends about it this time. I was like, look, I'm gonna start posting on like my fitness Instagram just to keep myself accountable. It was never for followers, never to make it a job or anything like that. I just enjoyed kind of sharing it. So I think around that point, I was at university, I had like 300 followers. I just didn't really think much into it. I just kind of posted what I was eating, what I fancied, just having a bit of fun with it really. Then in January, we obviously went into another lockdown. So this was January 2021. I had TikTok at this point. I think I'd posted like one TikTok about like putting nail varnish on my wall or something like that. It was something really weird. My TikTok app was like Holly Joss Brooks, so like my personal username, never anything fitness. And I remember seeing a what I eat in a day, and we were obviously in lockdown. I was really bored, and I was like, oh, like I can make one of those. Like I at that point loved creating really fun meals and things like that, and I was like, I can make one of those. Like I really like what I eat in a day. And like I was watching some of them and I was like, these people are literally just eating like chicken and rice. Like that's not, you don't need to be eating that. So I was like, I'm gonna make one just for fun. So I did it. Actually, just to note the date, so I posted that first TikTok on the 7th of January. I woke up to like 10,000 views. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. Should I do some more? I was like, yeah, why not? So a few days later, I posted what I eat in a days on the 11th, 12th and 13th. And the 13th one blew up in terms of like getting 1 million views, and I hit 20,000 followers on TikTok within 10 days just from jumping on that trend and just pumping out that content, because I was like, oh, this is really fun, like people are really engaging with it, I'm loving this, I'm just gonna keep posting them like repeatedly. So I just kept going with that, and within a month I'd hit 60k on TikTok, which was just absolutely crazy. And if you scroll down to like the bottom of my TikTok, you'll probably see that like all I was literally posting was about my fitness journey, like in terms of transformation videos and what I eat in a days. I think I was literally doing like 2 a week, 3 a week, something like that, something crazy. I was at uni at the time. I had like a lot of time on my hands, and we were in a lockdown. So throughout the course of that year, I just kind of kept going with it. Like I said, I was really enjoying it, and the pages just kind of kept on growing. TikTok was definitely the fastest grower. Instagram was fairly slow, but I think Instagram is a little bit slower than TikTok in terms of like growing following and like profile exposure and things like that. And then from that point, I just literally kept going with what was working. So I kept going with the white in a day. You guys will know that I still make them now. I was starting to do recipe ideas, things like that, post my progress. And yeah, I'd hit 100k on TikTok within 6 months and 30k on Instagram within 6 months. It is crazy, like we're a year on, so that was the 6 months mark. And then when it got to a whole year, I'd hit 100k on Instagram and I'd hit 300k on TikTok, which is just a ridiculous amount of people. So that's kind of the growth story. A lot of people said to me like, were you kind of nervous to start posting? And obviously, like I said, the original time I had the Instagram account, I was petrified of people finding it. I was blocking people. I didn't want anyone to know about it. It was just for like me and myself. Whereas the second time around, I kind of told my friends about it. Nobody was like, oh, what are you doing? Like, that's a bit cringe. And to be honest, if people are saying things like that, then they're not your friends. If that's genuinely a line of work or just a line of like fun and a hobby that you want to follow and people are telling you that it's cringe, then honestly, just prove them wrong. The joke is on them. So yeah, if you are somebody that is worried about kind of doing it, the best advice for getting started is just start. At the end of the day, if those people are following you and then going behind your back and saying mean things, that speaks volumes about them as people, because they're actively following you and checking up on you purely for the reason to be nasty about you. So I would just sit there and kind of think, that reflects so poorly on you. All you're trying to do is like help people and put good educational content out into the world. So I don't really understand how anyone can kind of bash that. So now we've had the little chat about kind of the growth and why I started the channel. I think what people are really interested in is kind of working with brands, how you work with brands, do you approach brands, things like that. So the brands that I currently work with are brands that have all approached me. I've never personally approached any brands. However, there is ways to get noticed by brands, which I definitely did do. I'm going to speak about that a bit later on in the video. So the first brands I was ever approached by, I was around 10 to 15K on TikTok. I think I had about 5,000 on Instagram, and they were Protein World and Misfits Health, and these were both asked on like affiliate basis. So when you work with brands, you kind of normally work on an affiliate basis where you just make commission, or it's like an athlete or ambassador scheme where you're paid retainers, so you're paid every month, basically like a bit of a wage with them, and you're on longer term contracts as well as making commission. I know some brands do structure it differently, but those are kind of the two general ways. So earlier on, when you normally have like smaller following, brands are more inclined to kind of work with you on an affiliate basis, so they're not going to pay you monthly retainers, you just make commission based off of what you sell. So I was approached by Protein World and Misfits Health on affiliate basis. However, I knew very early on the brands, when I kind of started to get a bit of engagement and attention for brands, I knew the brands that I wanted to work with, and for me with nutrition, it was always going to be My Protein. So then we kind of had a month on, so this was when I was around 60K on TikTok, 10K on Instagram. I actually became an affiliate for My Protein, which was so exciting. Like I said, I just knew that like they were the brand that I wanted to work with, so to kind of get that deal in an affiliate way was amazing. Also, a lot of brands will normally want to work with you on an affiliate basis in the beginning, just to kind of judge engagement, see the kind of content you're going to create, just to basically kind of put you on a bit of a trial run. And I then worked with them as an affiliate for 2 months, and 2 months later they did actually sign me as a My Protein athlete. Just to kind of reiterate how like you don't need masses of followers in order to be approached or work by brands. Before I'd hit 20K on Instagram, this was the list of brands I'd actually worked with. So I'd worked with Tanologist, Skinny Food, Bowen Tea and Coconut Lane. I think I probably had around 70 to 80K on TikTok at that time, so my TikTok following was larger. However, under 20K on Instagram, I'd already worked with all those brands. Tanologist and Skinny Food at that point were paid campaigns. However, with Bowen Tea and Coconut Lane, it was gifted. Now I'm going to go on and talk about two of the biggest brands that people were asking about, and I completely understand why. So a lot of people wanted to know when I started to work with Tala and Gymshark. So I was approached by Tala in, I think it was June/July. This was actually 5 months into influencing, and at that point I became the first ever Tala fitness ambassador, which was genuinely the biggest dream come true. Like, even to still work with Tala now, they're one of my favorite brands in the whole entire world, and I'd followed Grace from when she set up Tala all the way through like her journey, her fitness journey. So to work for her brand as the first ever fitness ambassador was probably the biggest pinch me moment of my whole entire life. Like, I still think that is just the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. Around that time I was approached by Gymshark to work with them on like a gifting only basis. However, because of my contract with Tala that was exclusive, meaning I could only wear Tala activewear, I did have to like kind of turn them away at that point. But that was actually 5 months into my influencing, I got approached by them. So I was actually a Tala ambassador for like 3 or 4 months, and then when that contract came to an end, was kind of like around the end of the year. And since then I've worked with Adidas, JD, Tala, Gymshark, My Protein Clothing, Riderwear, Bowen Tea. Like, the amount of brands is just absolutely crazy. That was all within a year. of starting any of my pages. The next thing people really wanted to know was when it kind of became a full-time career for me and how you can kind of turn social media into your full-time career. So the way I get paid and the way I make my income is basically through advertisements and brand work. So I work with some brands on a contracted like long-term retainer basis, meaning those brands pay me every single month and I'm on 12 months contracts with them. So those are kind of a fixed, like secure income. My other income comes from kind of like one-off ads. So say a brand approached me and they're like, oh, we're doing this campaign, we'd really like you to promote our fake tan, something like that. I will work with them, negotiate a brand deal. So that could be a reel, a set of stories, and one like feed post, something like that. And I will just get paid for that as like a one-off payment. I also make commission off of things. So you guys will see when I post like my protein code and my protein link. I will say with that kind of brand work, the commission percentage is very small. That kind of benefits the relationship more, if anything. It kind of shows the brands that people are engaging with your content, clicking on your links, using your discount code. It just kind of shows that like you are benefiting the business as an ambassador, if that makes sense. So those are kind of the key streams of income. When I kind of realized I could go like full time with influencing was last August. So I finished university. Instagram and TikTok were kind of taking off, but it wasn't serious enough to be a full-time job. I think I was only being paid by my protein at that time, so couldn't have even paid my rent with that. Then I got my grad scheme, which was a really amazing grad scheme, and everyone was so excited for me, and I was like, I'm gonna be able to balance both. I'm just gonna do both. I'll be fine, I'll survive. The grad scheme was very, very intense, which is fine. It's a full-time job, it probably should have been. Instantly, within a week, knew of doing this grad scheme that like, it just wasn't for me, purely because I was so passionate about my content creation. Like I love coming up with recipe ideas, I love cooking meals, I love making fitness content, and that was where like my head and my heart was, and it just wasn't in the job. However, I'd agreed to do this year-long grad scheme, and I said to my parents, like, I'm not very happy in it, but I'm gonna stick it out for a whole entire year because that's what you should do. Also, like I said, at this point, yeah, my head and my heart were not in my actual job. However, my head knew that for me to leave my full-time job with a secure wage to pursue this career of like content creation was not financially viable. I wouldn't have been able to pay rent. I wouldn't have even been able to actually pay for food to make recipe videos. So at that point, I just knew that like I couldn't leave. However, kind of a month into the grad scheme, this was around August last year, the money kind of started to come in a bit more. I had more brands wanting to work with me. I think I just signed with Tala as well. So the money was kind of there to support me. I do think that if you do have that kind of financial security blanket and you are in the industry of creating content and you kind of are considering whether to take the leap and do it full time, do it, because the amount of time that you will have to dedicate yourself to something that you genuinely love is just the best thing in the whole entire world. Also, I think brands really recognize that. Like since leaving my full-time job and doing this full-time, I think my level of content has increased. I can create way more content. I can put time into YouTube, which is something I really wanted to do. That is my Instagram, TikTok story in a bit of a nutshell. I'm still so early on in my journey that I still feel like I'm probably gonna redo this video maybe in like a year or two, and I've learned so much more since this point and probably look back and be like, oh God, you were such a baby, you had no idea. But yeah, that is basically everything in a nutshell. I'm gonna go through and kind of do like the little advice portion of the video. The first question I had was, do brands reach out to you or do you reach out to them? So as I mentioned earlier, I've never personally approached any brands. However, I did mention I did kind of go down the more indirect catching their eye kind of route. What I basically mean is like indirectly getting their attention through your content. So say for example, when I really wanted to work with my protein, the amount of videos that I would put my protein pancakes in, tag them in, use their hashtags, things like that really catch brands' attention and put you on their radar. So when I started off very early on and kind of could see my pages growing, I always knew there were specific brands that I would have absolutely loved to work with. So my protein were one very early on, Riderwear as well. If you guys look at my very early on videos, I was always wearing Riderwear. I would use all of my money that I had in my bank account when I was a student to just buy another Riderwear set to wear at the beginning of my what I eat in a day videos because I wanted to catch their attention so badly. Also brands like Tala, I always loved. So I would wear Tala, tag them. A really good way to kind of go about this is to go onto the brand's page and look at the kind of content that they post. That also helps you with getting like reposted by brands, which is really, really good for exposure. And recreate similar, but not the same. I want to put that out there. You don't want to be kind of churning out the same content as everyone else, but recreate similar style pictures that you feel like are going to catch their attention, fit on their feeds and things like that, because that's going to build a brand relationship. Like I said, put you on their radar, and they are going to notice it. Trust me, brands really notice it. And as I've always said, you don't need to have thousands of followers to work with brands. Brands look at things like your engagement, your posting style, your content. At the end of the day, as a content creator, you are creating advertisements for them. The amount of followers you have does not necessarily impact that. If people are engaging with your content to a really high level, if you have 300 followers and 300 people are engaging with that content, that is incredible engagement. If you're also creating really lovely advertisements that they can use and repurpose on their content pages for free, they're gonna absolutely love that. Like, brands eat that up. So those are kind of my main tips for catching a brand's attention, and trust me, it definitely worked. It worked for me with my protein especially. The next question somebody had was tips to help with growth. So I do have a few of these. This bit might be a little bit long-winded, but I'm going to try and compact them all, make them as short and punchy as possible. The first thing I want to start this section is by saying is please make sure that you're doing it for completely the right reasons. I kind of think the concentration should be on providing those people that do follow you with as much helpful content and valuable content as possible, rather than focusing on growing your page in order to kind of make money off of it and things like that. I think when you kind of start this path with that foot forward, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail, because you're starting it for the wrong reasons, and people do genuinely see through that. So that is kind of my first thing that I will just outline before I kind of go into tips for growth. So my first tip will be consistency. I think that goes without saying. You need to be consistent with your posting and consistently giving your audience new and engaging content. Don't just kind of throw posts together last minute that don't really add any value to them. So adding value to your posts is something that's really important. I always try to at least give my posts a slight element of value. So whether it's in a recipe video, I'm giving someone a recipe. If it's a post, I always try and give some maybe semi-educational content at the bottom of it or something like that in the caption. But I just think what kind of keeps people engaged in your content is when they are able to take something away from it. Anyone can post a picture, but what are you really going to give your audience that's different from someone else? It's going to genuinely help them in their fitness journey. That's the kind of thought process I always have before I post something. Also, things like reels are so important. Reels are so engaging, capture so many people's attention. If you are wanting to grow, reels are genuinely a really good way to do that, because they get exposed to a way bigger audience. They're more likely to kind of pop up on someone's feed a bit randomly as opposed to a normal feed post. So in terms of profile exposure, reels are definitely a really good way to go. Another thing I will also say is that you really need to kind of know your niche and focus on it. So for example, my niche, if you will, is like food and fitness. If I started to post kind of like fashion posts and things like that, that's not why people are on my page, and it wouldn't make much sense to my audience or to you guys, I guess, if I started being like, oh, I went bird watching today, here's a bird that I saw, and like started to post like pictures of birds every day. Why was the first thing that came to my head birds? But hopefully you guys know what I mean from that. Like, if I started to post pictures of like flowers every single day, you're gonna be like, this isn't really what we're here for. Like, we come to you for like food and fitness content. We're not here for flowers and birds. Focus on your niche and try to not make it too broad. I think that's important, because people kind of want to know what they're going to see when they come to your page. So moving on from nourishing and growing our platforms, somebody asked, do you have management and will I need it? So this is a good question, because it's something that I really thought that I needed. When I first started with Instagram, I used to think brands aren't going to work with me unless I have management. No one's going to take me serious. You do not need management at all. I personally would advise to not work with management. I say that in the terms of working with them exclusively, purely because I think being a content creator, one of the best things about this job is the freedom that it gives you. The freedom to kind of manage your own time and things like that. If you then go and get management, it can turn into more of a job. You do have to kind of work with someone else to set a schedule. Also, management do take a percentage of any brand deals that you do get. Saying this, I do actually work with 2 management firms on non-exclusive bases. So I work with a management firm called Engage, and I work with a management firm called W Model Management. So with both of those, I have certain brand deals that go through them that they brought to me. I personally will never ever work with anyone exclusively, purely because, like I said, I like managing my own time. I like being in charge of my own brand deals. I actually find negotiating the brand deals and that like admin side of it equally as good as the content creation, but you do not necessarily need management at all. The final question somebody asked is, does it get overwhelming at times? Yes. In the shortest answer in the world, yes. This job is phenomenal. I have the best job in the world. There is nothing in the world I would rather be doing, and since doing this job I feel like I've found something that brings me such creative fulfillment, and I feel like I literally am like one of the luckiest people in the world, because I know a lot of people would absolutely love to be in the position I am. Like any job, this job definitely has pros and cons. The pros far outweigh the cons in my opinion, and there's nothing in the world I would rather be doing, but that doesn't mean that there aren't cons, and at times it can be really overwhelming, and it's very hard when you have a job that is so numbers based in terms of followers, likes, comments, things like that. It can be hard to not get caught up in that and kind of take it personally. Like, being a content creator is one of the only jobs in the world where people can actually see how well you're doing at all time 24/7, and I find that really overwhelming sometimes. Like, if a post doesn't do well, if my followers kind of like stop growing, I get worried that like people are going to think that I'm failing, which is so irrational because nobody really cares about what anyone else does in the grand scheme of things. But I just have this kind of overwhelming sense of failing sometimes, I guess. It's definitely something that I'm learning and I'm coming to terms with the more like I kind of get into the job and things like that. I'm trying to deal with it in different ways. So yeah, there are definitely times when I feel very overwhelmed. It can be hard. I put a lot of pressure on myself. So that was basically what the majority of the questions were on. That is the end of the Q&A section of the video and the end of the video in general. Hopefully I haven't chatted to you guys for too long. It's felt so nice to be back in front of the camera, be back chatting to you guys, and I will be back next week with another new video. So have a lovely Sunday, guys.